How to speak intelligently. This seemingly simple question hides one of the most powerful secrets of human development and life in society. In a world where millions of voices compete for attention, the real differentiator is not just in what you know, but in how you convey what you know. To speak intelligently is to understand that communication is not a mechanical act of putting words together, but a psychological, emotional, and strategic process. It is the art of touching minds and hearts at the same time. Napoleon Hill, one of the greatest scholars of personal success and author of Think and Grow Rich, always stated that the ability to communicate clearly, confidently, and persuasively was one of the pillars to transform ideas into concrete results. And that's exactly what we're going to dive into: how to master the psychology of persuasive communication and turn every word into an instrument of impact. From an early age, we learn to speak, but few actually learn to communicate. There is a big difference between pronouncing sentences and inspiring people. Most speak to be heard, few speak to be remembered. This difference is what separates those who just participate in a conversation from those who lead a transformation. Intelligent speech is not linked to the excess of difficult words, nor to the accumulation of technical information. On the contrary, the clearer, more human, and more direct the communication, the stronger the impression it leaves. Great leaders, thinkers, and influencers have understood this. They knew that the right words, spoken in the right way at the right time, could change someone's mind, direct a decision, and even move entire multitudes. To speak intelligently is to understand the hidden power of word choice. Each term carries a weight, an emotion, and a psychological impact. When you speak, you are painting mental images in the mind of the other. If he chooses his words badly, he conveys confusion. If you choose well, you convey clarity and security. Think about how many times you felt inspired by someone who seemed to know exactly what to say. This person, without even realizing it, used the principles of persuasive communication. She knew how to use pauses, stories, metaphors, rhythm, and emotion. She didn't just talk, she built invisible bridges that connected her mind to her audience. This is the secret that transforms an ordinary conversation into an unforgettable dialogue. Another essential point is to understand that talking intelligently does not mean talking a lot. Often, it is in the well-placed silence that the strength of the message is found. Listening is a fundamental part of communication. Only those who have learned to listen attentively, pick up on nuances, understand feelings hidden behind words, and respond appropriately can speak in a truly persuasive way. Active listening and conscious speaking are two sides of the same coin. Napoleon Hill emphasized that the greatest leaders were also great listeners, because they knew that no one really influences without first deeply understanding who is in front of them. When we talk about persuasion, many think of manipulation, but they are different things. To manipulate is to force someone to do something they do not want, while to persuade is to awaken within the other the awareness that he can desire what is beneficial to him. Healthy persuasive communication is the art of aligning ideas, desires, and needs, showing paths that previously seemed invisible. It's about presenting solutions in a clear, inspiring, and logical way. It is convincing without pressuring, influencing without attacking, inspiring without dominating. It is this form of communication that generates trust, respect, and lasting connections. And only those who know how to balance reason and emotion, logic and feeling, firmness and empathy speak intelligently. One of the most powerful elements of intelligent speech is the ability to tell stories. Stories touch the mind on a level that cold data and arguments never can. They arouse emotion, create identification, and transport the listener into a scenario where the message comes to life. Think about how outstanding leaders and teachers often explain complex concepts with simple examples and engaging narratives. This resource is not accidental, it is strategic. Napoleon Hill used real stories and powerful metaphors to connect his lessons to people's daily lives, making them not only understandable but also memorable. But intelligence in speech is not only in the content. It is also in the tone of voice, in the intonation, in the posture, in the rhythm. Studies in communication psychology show that more than half of the impact of a message does not come from the words themselves, but from how they are delivered. A confident tone of voice generates credibility, while a hesitant tone conveys insecurity. Well-placed pauses generate suspense and attention, while a running speech conveys anxiety. Intelligent speech is therefore a balance between what is said and how it is said. It is a conscious exercise of aligning body, voice, and mind to convey a clear, strong, and engaging message. Another crucial point is to understand that intelligent speech begins long before opening your mouth. It is born of organized thought. Those who think in a confused way speak in a confused way. Those who organize their ideas, structure their reasoning, and understand the essence of what they want to convey, speak clearly and convincingly. Napoleon Hill stressed that clarity of purpose is the basis of effective communication. Before you speak, ask yourself, what exactly do I want to convey? What is the central message? What emotion do I want to arouse? When you have that defined, every word flows naturally and powerfully. The psychology of persuasive communication also teaches that it is necessary to adapt language to the audience. Speaking intelligently is not about using far-fetched words to sound superior, but about using the right language to connect. A good communicator can explain a complex concept to both a child and an expert, adjusting vocabulary, examples, and depth. This flexibility is a sign of communicative intelligence. It is the difference between being understood only by some and being understood by all. The real genius is not in complicating, but in simplifying without losing depth. Understanding the other is as essential as expressing yourself. Persuasive communication involves empathy, the ability to put yourself in the other person's shoes and see reality through their eyes. When you demonstrate that you understand what the person feels, thinks, and needs, your words gain credibility. Intelligent speech is not only centered on the speaker, but mainly on the listener. It is a dialogue, not a monologue. It is knowing how to adjust your message to the experience and context of those in front of you. It is transforming information into connection. Communicative intelligence also requires authenticity. No one allows himself to be persuaded for long by someone who pretends to be what he is not. Authenticity conveys confidence, and trust is the foundation of persuasion. When your words reflect your values, your beliefs, and your truth, they carry a force that no artificial technique can imitate. Napoleon Hill emphasized that the power of faith and personal conviction was what made a message irresistible. It is not enough to repeat memorized phrases. It is necessary to believe what is said. It is this belief that brings words to life. So far, we have seen that intelligent speech involves choice of words, tone of voice, clarity of ideas, active listening, empathy, and authenticity. But there is still an element that few realize: emotional energy. All communication is charged with emotion, even when the content is rational. People are moved by feelings, and words work as triggers to awaken them. A cold speech can inform, but it hardly transforms. On the other hand, a speech loaded with genuine emotion has the power to move mountains. Communication psychology shows that people remember much more of what they felt during a conversation than the exact content they heard. In other words, emotion is the glue of memory. And it is at this point that communication becomes an art, balancing emotion and reason. Emotion without reason becomes manipulation. Reason without emotion becomes coldness. Intelligent speech unites the two. It presents logical arguments that convince the mind and awaken feelings that touch the heart. This balance is the secret of great speakers, leaders, and communicators. They not only inform, but transform. His words not only explain, but inspire. They know that speaking well is not a gift restricted to a few, but a skill that can be learned, practiced, and perfected by all. When we look at those who exert true influence on others, we realize that there is an invisible thread that connects their words to people's hearts. This thread is built through trust, clarity, and the intention behind speech. It is not enough to speak beautifully, it is necessary to speak meaningfully. The empty speech may even impress for a few moments, but it does not leave roots. Intelligent speech, on the other hand, based on values, knowledge, and authenticity, creates lasting memories. It's the kind of communication that keeps echoing even after the conversation is over. This is the power of the psychology of persuasive communication. to make an impact that goes beyond the present moment. To develop this skill, it is first necessary to understand the human mind. Our brains have not only been programmed to process information, but to respond emotionally to it. Each word awakens associations, memories, and feelings. Therefore, an intelligent communicator does not limit himself to transmitting data, he creates mental experiences. Think, for example, of a teacher who speaks only technically. He delivers information, but hardly inspires. A teacher who mixes content with emotion, stories, and practical examples can not only teach, but transform learning into something alive. The same happens in any everyday conversation. If your words don't arouse emotion, they will be easily forgotten. Another point that deserves reflection is that persuasive communication does not depend on chance. There is science, strategy, and practice behind it. Napoleon Hill has always pointed out that success does not happen by luck, but by the application of universal principles. Communication is no different. It can be planned, practiced, and improved. You can train your intonation, adjust your vocabulary, study psychological triggers, improve your listening skills, and learn how to better structure your lines. Every conversation becomes a training opportunity, and every training brings you closer to mastery. Those who understand this stop seeing speech as something natural and begin to see it as a powerful tool that can be molded and refined. There is also an important detail. Speaking intelligently does not always mean being serious or technical. Often, lightness, humor, and naturalness are elements that make communication more attractive. People like to connect with those who transmit humanity. Too much formality can create distance, while simplicity brings you closer. That's why some of the greatest leaders and communicators in the world can be profound without being complicated. They can deal with serious issues without losing proximity to those who listen to them. Intelligence lies in knowing how to balance depth and accessibility without falling into the extremes of superficiality or intellectual arrogance. It is also essential to understand that, in all communication, there is an invisible game of attention. The human mind is easily distracted, especially in today's stimuli-filled world. Therefore, speaking intelligently requires the ability to keep one's attention alive. This can be done through strategic pauses, thought-provoking questions, metaphors that create mental images, and subtle changes in the rhythm of speech. When you always speak in the same tone and with the same cadence, the listener gets lost. But when it varies, when it causes small surprises, when it involves the other in reasoning, attention is renewed at every moment. It's like conducting a melody. Each note needs to have its time and strength for the music to be remarkable. And we cannot forget the role of self-confidence. Words can be perfect, but if they are spoken with insecurity, they lose impact. The human mind detects subtle signs of hesitation. Persuasive communication is born from the belief in one's own discourse. Napoleon Hill spoke about the importance of applied faith, believing deeply in what is transmitted. This conviction shines through in the voice, in the look, in the gestures. An insecure person may even master the technique, but he does not convince. Someone who genuinely believes in what they say infects others with their certainty. Therefore, speaking intelligently is not only mastering external techniques, but also strengthening one's own internal conviction. Body language is also an inseparable part of this equation. When we speak, we do not communicate only with words, but with the whole body. A steady gaze conveys confidence, while a lost gaze reveals doubt. Coherent gestures reinforce the message, while excessive movements are distracting. The upright posture conveys authority, while the hunched body demonstrates insecurity. The listener reads the body as much as he hears the voice. Therefore, intelligent speech is the one that aligns what is said with what is shown. If there is a contradiction between words and body, the message loses strength. If there is coherence, persuasion multiplies. Another essential aspect is adaptability. Each person, each audience, each situation requires a different type of communication. What works in a formal setting may sound awkward in an intimate conversation. What convinces in a debate can drive away in a dialogue of friendship. To speak intelligently is to have the sensitivity to adjust tone, vocabulary, and energy to the context. This adaptability is a sign of respect and keen perception. It is the ability to read one's surroundings and the other person before choosing words. Those who master this skill never sound out of place, because they know that communication is not about imposing a style, but about creating connection. And, perhaps most importantly, intelligent speech needs to be in service of something bigger, building bridges, resolving conflicts, inspiring growth. When communication is used only as a weapon of vanity or manipulation, sooner or later it empties. But when it is used to add value, strengthen relationships, and transform realities, it becomes unforgettable. Healthy persuasion is one that helps others see opportunities, awaken inner strength, and make wiser decisions. It does not enslave, it liberates. It does not deceive, it clarifies. It does not impose, it inspires. This is the legacy that remains when we learn to speak in a really intelligent way. When we reach this point, it is inevitable to reflect that speaking intelligently is not a gift reserved for an enlightened few, but a practice that can be cultivated every day. Communicative intelligence is built on conscious repetition, on the daily exercise of organizing thoughts, listening attentively, and speaking clearly. It is a path that is learned by living, making mistakes and correcting, observing how people react to our words, and adjusting the way we express ourselves. The big key is to realize that every speech is also a learning opportunity, and that every conversation we have can make us better communicators. This is the true invisible training of persuasion, to transform everyday life into a silent school where each dialogue is a rehearsal for the next. Napoleon Hill always pointed out that the mind is like a garden. If you plant negative ideas, you reap poor results. If he cultivates constructive thoughts, he reaps abundance. The same happens with communication. If you feed on empty and scattered words, your speech will reproduce this chaos. But if you feed the mind with clarity, focus, and good examples, your words will be fertile seeds that will bear fruit in any environment. This process requires discipline. It's not about memorizing sound bites, but about cultivating a state of mind of clarity and purpose. When the mind is aligned, the mouth naturally becomes more persuasive, because it conveys not only information, but conviction. Another important aspect is the awareness of time. Intelligent speech knows when to start and, above all, when to end. Many lose the power of their words because they do not know how to close. They continue to speak even after they have already conveyed the essential message, and this dilutes the impact. The psychology of communication shows that the human brain values the first impression and the last. Therefore, starting with impact and ending with clarity is as important as the content of the medium. Learning to conclude a speech in a remarkable way is a sign of communicative intelligence. A good ending doesn't have to be long, but it does need to be memorable. It's like a mark left in the listener's mind, a phrase or image that keeps echoing even after the conversation is over. And at this point, it is inevitable to speak of silence. Many believe that speaking well means never stopping talking, but silence is one of the most powerful tools of communication. It creates space for reflection, conveys security, and gives weight to the previous words. A well-placed silence can be more persuasive than 10 running sentences. It shows that you trust your message to the point of allowing it to be absorbed without haste. In addition, silence makes room for the other to manifest themselves, which reinforces the feeling of dialogue instead of monologue. Those who know how to use silence not only speak intelligently, but create a magnetic presence that holds attention effortlessly. Intelligent speech also carries a responsibility. Every time you open your mouth, you can build or destroy, you can bring you closer or farther away, you can inspire or demotivate. This awareness changes the way we communicate. If before we spoke impulsively, now we start to choose words more carefully. And this care is not artificiality, but respect. Respect for oneself and for others. Napoleon Hill said that the power of words is directly linked to the intention of those who use them. When the intention is true, constructive, and aligned with positive values, communication gains a natural strength that surpasses any technique. With this, we come to the central point. To speak intelligently is to align mind, heart, and mouth. It is allowing your words to be a reflection of what you really believe and feel. It is not hiding behind masks or pretense, but conveying authenticity in every sentence. People may not remember all the arguments you presented, but they will never forget the sense of truth you conveyed. This is the essence of persuasive communication: to conquer not by imposition, but by trust, not by manipulation, but by inspiration. In the end, the psychology of persuasive communication shows us that the secret is not to become someone who masters techniques to impress, but someone who masters himself to connect. It is learning to balance reason and emotion, firmness and empathy, clarity and flexibility. It is to transform every word into a bridge, every conversation into an opportunity, and every silence into a link. The modern world desperately needs voices that speak with wisdom, balance, and compassion. When you decide to become one of these voices, you not only gain more respect and influence, but you also contribute to a more humane and conscious environment. Therefore, speaking intelligently is, above all, an act of leadership. Not in the sense of leading multitudes, but of leading your own life, your own relationships, and your own ways. It is to understand that the word is energy, and that this energy can shape destinies. It's recognizing that by mastering the psychology of persuasive communication, you not only improve your speech, but transform your presence. And when your presence transforms, the world around you also begins to change. This is the true heritage of Napoleon Hill and of all those who understood the invisible power of the word, that communicating intelligently is not a luxury, but a necessity. It is not talent, but practice. It is not chance, but conscious choice. And if there is a final message that should remain echoing after all this immersion, it is this: speaking well is not talking too much, it is not speaking difficult, it is not speaking louder. To speak well is to speak with intention, clarity, and authenticity. It is having the courage to express what you think, but also the humility to listen to what the other has to say. It is to use communication not as a weapon of vanity, but as a bridge of transformation. If you learn to cultivate this balance, your words will become tools of light in a world full of noise. And at that moment, you will have gained not only the ability to speak intelligently, but the power to influence lives in a positive and unforgettable way.